shaping our perceptions and unwittingly coercing our decisions. But who are the true architects of this influence?
Are they the journalists who deliver the news, the politicians who craft policies, or the public who ultimately consumes and reacts to it all? Today, we delve into this fascinating dynamic with our panel discussion: journalists, politicians, or public, who shapes whom?
We have assembled a truly remarkable panel of experts, each bringing unique insights and perspectives to this crucial conversation. We have with us Ms. Vaishna Roy, an accomplished journalist and editor with extensive experience in leading editorial teams and crafting compelling narratives. She currently serves as the editor-in-chief at Frontline, a publication of the Hindu group. Her work encompasses a wide range of topics, including politics, culture, and social issues. She has also participated in literary discussion, such as conversation with author Manu S. Pillai on the rise of the Hindu right. Welcome, ma'am.
We have Mr. Sahil Joshi. He is the managing editor at Aaj Tak and India Today, overseeing the Mumbai Bureau and the Marathi web channel Mumbai Tak. A chevening scholar with a postgraduate degree in economics, he specializes in political reporting and analysis, covering significant events like the 2005 Mumbai deluge and the 26/11 terror attacks. We welcome you, sir.
He'll be joining us shortly.
We have Dr. Milind Kokje. He serves as chief editor for Biospectrum Asia, Biospectrum India, and New Food Spectrum, publications under Active SciTech Communications. For his extensive experience in science and health journalism, he was honored with the Innovation Leadership in Nutrition Journalism Award by Nutrify India in 2021. Welcome, sir.
We have Mr. Sahil Joshi join us. And of course, we have our moderator for the panel, Ms. Chetna Israni. A communication... Yes. Since sir is here, we would like to introduce him one more time.
So we have with us Mr. Sahil Joshi. He is the managing editor at Aaj Tak and India Today, overseeing the Mumbai Bureau and the Marathi web channel Mumbai Tak. A chevening scholar with a postgraduate degree in economics, he specializes in political reporting and analysis, covering significant events like the 2005 Mumbai deluge and the 26/11 terror attacks. We welcome you, sir.
And of course, we have our moderator for the panel, Ms. Chetna Israni, a communication strategist. She is the founder and director at Morningstar Brandcom. She is an IIM Calcutta executive alumna and a Goldman Sachs alumna. With almost 2 decades of experience in the world of communication, ma'am brings insightful engagement in today's panel. Welcome, ma'am. We request our dignitaries to please come on stage.
Now, with these sharp minds ready to dissect this complex issue, let's dive right in. We've all seen the headlines, heard the speeches, and felt the shifts in the public sentiment. But what's the engine driving it all?
With that, we are set for the scintillating session. We open this panel for discussion. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Firstly, a very warm welcome to my panelists, Sahil, Vaishna, and Milind. Is it all right if I address you by your first names? Thank you. So, for the benefit of everyone, since we are discussing a topic that involves journalists, politicians, and public, it's important to tread in gently. So, why not we open the panel discussion with, and we'll go one by one. How do you see the role of journalists, politicians, and the public evolving in today's media landscape. So your version of it.
Well, this is a very generic question. So,
Right.
there is no, first of all, I don't think that the relationship which actually should matter is basically the journalist and the public. I mean, the politician and journalist always evolve their relationships. In any of the issue, whenever any issue arises, the politician and journalists always have this bitter and sweet relationship, and it has always been there like that. Not even today's landscape, even before. Now it has become kind of more transactional with respect to the news as such. The politicians have become more aware of their public image. That was not the case before, because now the media is on your face, and if media is not there, then the social media is also there. So they are more aware about how they present themselves. Sometimes they do it deliberately. But as far as the public is concerned, that is what I think is the more concern area, because the growing, I mean, the belief system of the people in general have changed with respect to the media. There was a time when, in Marathi, people used to say कि एकदा गोष्ट छापून आली म्हणजे ती खरी आहे. Whatever is printed is the truth. Then when the television came, that time whatever is shown is the truth. Now the things have gone beyond that. So that is, I think, is more concern area rather than the relationship with the politicians, because media and politicians will see what they can do about it. But with respect to the media, that belief system has completely changed. Most of the time what we have seen is that the people believe that just because it is seen on the media does not mean it is true. They tend to believe more on the WhatsApp messages than what is actually shown in the media. It's very easy to put any kind of a message saying that koi media aapko ye nahi dikhayega, and people will have more belief in that. So that is I think the more concern area with respect to the today's media landscape. Also, the generation of the generation is changed in the media as well as in the public. So they are also looking at the news coverage, the media in a completely different light altogether. So that is something which I think media should consider about, and we are still trying to understand how we can go beyond it. When there was a time when there was a magazine, only magazines, the people used to read, actually buy the magazines and read it in a long format. The attention has gone down. We have been pushed to write stories not more than 700 to 800 words. The long form is almost gone. Yeah. The digital media is showing something different. The mainstream media is showing something different. So that is I think is more concern area. So that how we do it, everybody is trying to understand that ये कैसे किया जाए, but अभी तक उसका कोई ठोस जवाब नहीं है. There is no specific answer to that actually.
I met a journalist, very senior journalist, about a month or two back, and he said something very similar to what you're saying. He said media ko PR ki zarurat hai. Like, why aren't people giving the same respect that earlier was given, like you said, to the written word or to the telecasted word, because news gets diluted as it goes into WhatsApp University and then something else comes out.
Also maybe because, I'm sure that both my co-panelists will agree to this, that also that earlier the media and media person was the only mediator between the happening and the reader or the public, basically. But now there are multiple interfaces. And now it is in the hand of the public what they need to choose. Like if you ask my daughter, who is 13 years old, I don't think she has ever watched television. She hardly reads newspaper. Whatever she consumes is out of the digital platform or the mobile phone or iPad or whatever she has in her hand. So I'm sure this is the same thing with the people sitting here. The 20-year-old generation today, they consume everything from the mobile phones. So that has also changed. So they have the multiple options. And that is where the things are.
News has become bite-sized for their consumption. Vaishna, what would you like to add to that?
Very briefly, really, if you speak of the three, how do journalists relate to the media landscape, how do politicians, and how do public, how does the public? Journalists, I think, in the present landscape, their responsibility has increased many times over. So their job has become much more difficult, but simultaneously the responsibility has grown. You can no longer, it is, as he mentioned, from a time when journalists were the only intervention between the happening and the public, now there are multiple interventions, and every one of you in the auditorium today is a citizen journalist of kind. You've got a camera in your hand, you've got a phone in your hand, you're reporting something. In one way, that's very good because it's a democratization of news and one is happy to see it. But in one way, it's also dangerous because one has no way of understanding what is right and what is not right, what is factual, what is not factual, what is biased. And so there is this key element of fact-checking, of verification, which is not happening. Therefore, I believe journalists have a far greater responsibility today. What is the role of politicians? In my opinion, they have absolutely no role to play in media. They should not be interfering at all. They should be sitting and doing their job of governance. They should be sitting and doing their job of lawmaking or whatever. However, sadly, sad to say, they're interfering constantly in media and they are trying to curb media because they constantly want positive reports about them. They don't want media to do the role that it's supposed to do. They don't want media to be a watchdog. They want media to be their PR agency, which happily for them is happening to a great extent. What's the role of the public? The public has to be much more aware of what is going on. And again, I'm going to echo what Sahil said, that the public must choose what it wishes to consume. The public must understand what it is that is a fact and what is fake, and try to understand what are the sources of news that it can trust, and therefore what are the sources of news it should. So I think the public should make a difference between popularity or the number of hits that something gets vis-a-vis where are your facts, what can I trust. So that is an evolution that we need to see, and I hope we will see that in coming days.
Sure. And Dr. Milind.
Hello. When I joined journalism, I was told two things by my senior at that time. And first was that, remember one thing, that we are most close to the politicians. So whatever is the level of corruption of the politicians is the level of corruption in journalism also. So that was point number one. Point number two, he said, also remember that you don't count here. Initially, you will feel that, Chief Minister calls you and talks to you. So you feel that I'm so great. The brand behind you is actually important. And why that brand is important? Because that brand has got so many lakh readers. So you are working on behalf of so many lakh readers. That is more important. I think these 2 points clearly told me between the relationship between the politicians and media and the public. In the current perspective, the major change that has happened is that the journalism has spread now. As she mentioned, that anybody is a journalist now because I got a camera in my phone. If something happens, I will shoot it immediately, send it to somebody, and they will publish it. It has got its own problems also. Like she said that this one thing I found out in my research on ethics about 8-9 years back. That when I asked the question to the readers that how do you feel about the trustworthiness of news media, and my research was basically about the print, so television, etc. was not counted in that. Large number of readers had said that they still believe in the print, and that is because print, they feel, comes from an institution, and they believe in the institution. So they don't have a similar feelings about the other media forms like television or digital, and they don't feel that it's coming from the institution. And when you come to now, any common person shooting something and sending, absolutely no institution is involved. So by institution, I mean they know that in institutions, there are certain checks and balances. So in a way, it's good that anybody is shooting something and publishing something. Earlier, what used to happen, they used to send it to us. And then we apply our own criteria, and then we will show it on television. But now they directly can show it. So that element of institution has gone, and that's why the problem is credibility is more in the current scenario that we must understand.
I just want to give one example of the recent Lok Sabha election results. The legacy media, or what Milind was mentioning, the institutions, the institutional media, which has big brands established in India since a long time. All these media, the mainstream, the institutional media has lost its influence over the minds of the people. Very interestingly, that this time somebody sitting in Germany like Dhruv Rathi had more influence over the way people thought, the voters thought, and the way the people have voted. That's why the unexpected results have come, in Lok Sabha elections. And that is something which is really interesting. Dhruv Rathi is not even a journalist. In the digital world, everybody is living in their own echo chambers. The people who are watching Ravish Kumar, they blindly believe that whatever Ravish Kumar is saying is the ultimate truth. There is nothing else but than what he is saying. And on the other hand, somebody who is giving a completely different perspective, the people who are watching them, they believe that whatever that the other person is saying, the left, right, or whatever you call it, is the ultimate truth. And they tend to believe their own belief system, which is being repeated by those people. So that influence by the traditional media, what he was mentioning, and various surveys, whenever the people want to take, they always say that humko shanti chahiye. But that is not actually the truth. But that is not happening, and that's what happening with the media as well. That whenever they say ki no, we don't trust the rest of the media, we trust the traditional media. But whenever it comes to choosing it, what we are seeing is completely different.
Hey, I'll just interrupt you for a minute over there. I just want to share something very interesting with you, because he mentioned Dhruv Rathi. When Dhruv Rathi presents his videos, a lot of his facts and a lot of his stories come from print media.
Yeah.
So you'll find Dhruv Rathi quotes Frontline, Dhruv Rathi quotes The Hindu, he quotes big legacy media foundation. So the trust.
But even he has been fact-checked.
So where we should not, he's been fact-checked, but he gets his facts from legacy media.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing to note here is that you're coming back to facts to legacy media, and believe me, I'm not batting for legacy media. I think it might die, and I'm very confident that print will not exist 10 years down the line. If we sit on the same stage, I might not have a magazine to show you. I'm not batting for legacy media. I'm just saying that the trust factor, as you mentioned, is still very very strong in legacy media, and people like Ravish, people like Dhruv Rathi go back to our publications in order to glean their numbers, glean their facts, and then they present it on stage. So it's the medium that has changed. Right. They're coming back to a certain kind of journalism to present their facts. Okay, that's point number one. And but I'm just wondering whether we are paying enough attention. Big point I'm trying to make really is that journalism need not change. Yeah. It's just that the media changes.
The presentation has changed. The way you present
the delivery mechanism.
The delivery mechanism.
I will give you one small, funny and small example here. How people believed in the news media. Times of India published a story from an Ayurvedic doctor in Kerala. He invented some kind of oil that really grew hair. And he published his daughter's photograph with long hair, etc. And let me tell you that later Godrej purchased that brand and they developed called Anup oil. So that was the original Ayurvedic oil developed by that Kerala doctor. So for 4 or 5 days or more than a week almost, all phones in Times of India editorial department were continuously ringing only with one question: give us the contact detail of that doctor. So much so that after 2 days at every telephone we put up a note that this is that doctor's number, because earlier nobody knew about it. So everybody will ask, kiska kya number hai? But then we put a number there so that immediately the reference is available. So I realized one thing, that still, at least in some cases, newspapers rule and they really make influence on the audience. And the second point is the most important problem in this world is the growing hair. Or not having the enough hair, and that's why everybody was interested in that problem.
No, but this is no, but I mean, you are talking about examples some many years back. Just recent example. It's nothing to do with journalism, but that is how the public at large consume the information. I have not seen the film, but I don't know. I mean, if anybody of you have seen the film Chhawa, which is apparently very hit film at this point of time, and there is. apparently there is something shown in that film that a khazana of the Marathas
they all landed up there.
is buried in Burhanpur Fort.
They dug it up.
The people went there and they started digging the whole night. Finally, the collector had to come and say, and that became a story actually the next day. So that is how the public belief system is. So somebody who is sitting in Germany or somebody who is sitting in London can make a video and actually influence the way people actually think than somebody, and the person can actually code, as she has mentioned, Frontline and Outlook and the India Today and others, which India Today has already printed or Frontline is already printed, but people have not read it. And somebody can actually influence it like that. So that is something which has completely changed altogether.
Even the example of Ganesha drinking milk.
Yeah.
The
The virality of it. In fact, what I draw from all three of you is, while we are not saying it out loud, but public has a larger responsibility. Today, a Dhruv Rathi or a Ranveer is able to do what they are able to do because they are excellent marketers. I mean, they draw from legacy media for fact-checking, for information, but they're excellent marketers in delivery mechanism, which is why the public is consuming that content. And who's shaping this? It's the public that's shaping this. If this is what you like to consume, this is what you will be served. Even if, journalism does its best to serve you fact-checked, processed information. Like you said, if in the earlier days, if a video came to a news channel, it would be processed. You would check the veracity of it, you would verify, you would fact check, you will process the information, and then there would be reportage. And as compared to now, when anyone can shoot something and upload. So why has that changed? I think, yes, with the times, but also we've encouraged that as public, we've encouraged that delivery mechanism. We've allowed for that many views.
No, but we also have to understand that the mediums have changed. So, the time for processing information and actually putting it somewhere is no more in the hands of a journalist. Because, say, if anything happens and by the time you get the video, you verify the veracity of that, whether that particular video is right or wrong. By that time, it is already on the social media. So that the processing time has also gone down. It's been taken out completely. So that is another challenge, how to remain correct with your information.
While still being correct.
While still being, before, earliest, basically. Because social media is, actually, in today's world, none of the television channel is breaking any story. Everything has been broken on social media. Even the politicians are choosing social media to put out their statements first. The time is gone when the politician used to choose a journalist to speak, that this is what is my reaction on so-and-so thing has happened and all that. They put out their information. Even whatever happened in the White House was first reported on the social media, not even on the television. So things have changed. People are consuming it somewhere else. And that is the fact which journalists also have to understand. So their role is now predominantly, what I feel is becoming like analyzing a story correctly and putting it in a right perspective for your viewer. And that is where will make a difference between the today's journalist and what the journalist the reporter used to do earlier. Even the reporter has to imbibe those analytical skills to adapt more.
Sure. Technology have evolved. The ways in which technology has evolved, it has prioritizing speed over accuracy.
Yes.
And when that happens, when it's more important to see who's putting the news out first, who has read it first, and then who's sharing it on WhatsApp first, and that becomes much more important than being concerned about whether the truth, whether the what you're putting out is actually factually correct or did happen or did not happen. So in a way, our priorities are changing, and if we can reprioritize how we approach the idea of information and news, that will be, I think, a very important step to take. And as he says, the role of the journalist it's become more important. You are going to have to sit there and analyze the news and tell people what it is that they're reading, what is it that they're consuming, and what does it really mean in the bigger picture. The context setting has to happen from the journalist.
Sure. Moving into the dynamic relationship between journalism and politics, although I agree with you that they should have no part in it, and with you that that's a relationship that has always been there, bittersweet. It will keep evolving with time. But if we have to discuss that in detail, and my question to you, Sahil, is, especially given your extensive experience in political reportage, how do you perceive the influence of political entities is on journalistic narratives?
It is there. I mean, it's like elephant in the newsroom at this point of time. You know, it is like, it is all. I think it has always been there.
Yeah.
Is it only today? I mean,
It's increased now.
I don't know. I mean, we have heard stories of journalists. I don't want to name anyone, but in 70s and 60s, journalists carrying messages from one politician for the other politician, and it has become a legendary stories, you know, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm sure, I mean, that has happened even before. But
Politicians have always had a...
Used journalists.
Used journalists, exactly.
used
And
journalism.
there were groups also, you know, particular group of journalists
Yeah.
belonging to this minister, particular journalist.
You know, but I want to mention one thing here. I mean, I've actually started as a very rookie reporter before getting behind the camera and all that. But so I have seen in last 20 years what has changed is that the new generation, they actually do not care about any politician anymore.
Yeah.
There was a time when you used to first see a chief minister that used to get overwhelmed by that. But I don't think that today's generation is like this, that they actually get overwhelmed with politicians, because that there was a time when you used to look up to only the politicians, somebody who has achieved something as a chief minister or a member of parliament or the local MLA and all that stuff. Now the new generation has many more things to achieve. You know, they look up to some film star as well. They look up to some industrialist as well. Some
idealism has
some
changed.
writer as well, and somebody else. I mean, from different fields altogether. So now I don't think they get overwhelmed with the politicians
they're not-
anymore.
no
There is
longer
a
in
reason
awe.
for that. There is a very interesting reason.
And also
for that.
because maybe the level of the politicians have also
Has
gone down a
also-
lot.
No, that is one point.
Yeah.
That definitely is there. But there is also one thing that we must consider, that compared to our generation, their dependence on government has become a less.
That's
I mean, I have eaten a food which, when I was getting, my family was getting food from ration shop only. So we had to depend on the government. A lot of my friends and many of my relatives, they were born in a government hospital or a municipal maternity home. Our education was funded by the government. There were no private schools.
Yes.
So everything we were depending on the government at that time. Even for a milk, a liter of milk, we had to carry a milk card.
Yes.
Then only used to get it. So that dependency has gone down. So why I should feel anything about any politician? That is also one of the reasons.
Yeah. So that's why the new generation of journalists, they don't get overwhelmed with the politicians at all. And the reporter, they have no qualms in asking questions to a politician. The more you go higher up, then you start developing those, you know.
Because your equity.
I don't know what happens to a lot of times, but otherwise I don't think a basic. You have a press conference. I mean, I still go for the press conference just to see what happens a lot of times, and I see that a 3-year-old a reporter who has a 3 years experience in journalism, say for an example, 2-3 years, he's more outspoken in the
More
press
unfiltered.
conference and more unfiltered and ask a question which becomes really embarrassing for somebody who is sitting on the dais and gets a problem.
On that note, I wanted to ask you, for the younger audience, how would you feel about sharing a few instances where questioning or journalism held politicians accountable?
No, I remember the press conference of Vilasrao Deshmukh was the chief minister, and the great Mumbai deluge in 2005, July 2005, and the government had no idea of what to do about it, because they were all
unprecedented.
it was unprecedented, and the way the press conference went, it had that the pressure on the government was built up, and they had to move because of that. Even after 26/11 attack, the chief minister had to go because the way the media reported.
Yeah.
And it has happened in the past at various instances. I mean, not that. And nowadays the things are completely different. That there is hardly a press conference what we see. But despite that, if they,
Nobody is removed also for any allegation.
no allegation. Yeah, nobody is removed for any allegation. But this has happened a lot of times. I mean, if the media picks up a right story at right time. I mean, the recent example in Maharashtra is of a story of a murder of a sarpanch
Yeah, the Munde resignation.
in Bid. And please understand, the story was not picked up by the institutional media. The story was picked up by the digital media. And the local journalists from Bid, they actually reported fearlessly. Now what we are seeing is that finally the minister has to resign. Not because he's not been found in the murder case yet, but the overall atmosphere there, I mean, the way he was giving patronage to the people involved in the murder and all that stuff. So this is a recent story in Maharashtra which was actually making a buzz, which was reported by the traditional media only on the day when the minister resigned. But till then, it was completely handled by the local media, and still it had an impact. So that is where I'm talking about, that
accountability.
Yeah.
And Vaishna, for you, Frontline is known for its rigorous reporting. When it comes to politically sensitive issues, how do you manage to stay independent editorially?
See, editorial independence is something that it's sacrosanct. It's like the doctor's Hippocratic oath, right? So a journalist enters the business knowing that he or she has to be an independent entity who is very much the fourth pillar of democracy, whose one and only job is to question the government in power. So questioning the government in power is the only reason you exist, not in order to be contrarian, but in order to make the government accountable, because the government is not a royal king who's sitting on a throne. The government is a democratically elected leader elected by you and me, therefore accountable to you and me. So therefore there is journalists whose job is to ensure that they are doing the job that they were elected for. So to try to finesse this question and to understand that, they're talking directly to media, so they don't have to talk to journalists. These are ways in which we can escape it. There are other ways in which to escape it when, for instance, young people come up to me and say, why don't you report about positive things, right? Why don't you say good things? But to report about positive things that the government does, the government has PR agencies, right? It doesn't need journalists for that job. So to make this distinction very clear between PR and journalism is what we have to do. And how do you maintain independence also is by ensuring that you cover all sides of the question. You can't afford to be biased. You can't say that I will only do a hit job on one side of the equation, or the middle, or the left, or the right, or the middle, or whatever. You continuously question everything and everybody, regardless of who is in power. So that then becomes your responsibility. Regardless of which party is in power, you hold up the mirror and you hold them accountable. So I think that is an aspect that has increasingly been lost in the last decade or so, and that's an aspect which we have to bring back into journalism.
Sure, and Vaishna, like you said, why talk about the good work that they are doing? One, like you said, they have the PR agency. Two, isn't that their job? I mean, why should I dedicate reportage to you doing your job?
Yeah,
You're supposed to do that.
Exactly. So if a government is providing, say, ration shops, that's what it's supposed to do.
It's coming from tax money.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Or if it builds a road or whatever, it is supposed to do that. So you have to go back and look at, say, a rural...
Yeah, what was not done.
Did the road reach there? Exactly.
So, great. Dr. Milind, since you spoke about... I remember when we were sitting before... we came up on the stage, and Dr. Milind was sharing with me that you stopped active reportage journalism in 1999. Yeah. So that's when he stopped. So I cannot begin to count back since when he's been doing this. So my question to you is...
That's where I started, actually.
So my question to you is, especially for the younger audience, if you can share examples or instances where media coverage impacted public policy.
First, I think is that let us understand one thing, that media coverage itself doesn't influence the public or the policymakers also, unless there is some crisis, then it's an exceptional case. Various factors have to come together. When media does any campaign, always remember that there is somebody who is feeding me the information. I will verify it and then I will not verify it and I will publish it. That's a different part, whether I'll verify or not. But somebody is feeding me the information. Someone like you come to us and you tell us that, in this sector, this is what is happening. Then okay, we'll start investigating into that. And then if we find out, there is something really there, then we may go ahead and do a story on that. So there are always different factors which are working. There are several people who have come to me and we have written stories many a times. But by that stories, some small changes can happen. But overall, for policy change, you require a lot of movement from the public also. Because remember one thing, politicians ultimately count numbers. आपके पीछे कितने लोग हैं? बहुत लोग हैं, तो I will consider. ज़्यादा लोग नहीं है, तो I will not take your note. It's very simple. So आप आज़ाद मैदान में कितने लोग जमा कर सकते हो मोर्चा के लिए? It all depends on that. So it's very difficult to give these kind of examples, but since I am in this field of now healthcare and biotechnology, etc., I can give you two recent examples. One is old and one is recent. When the first Indian Patent Act came, so their media played an important role. Okay. But again, as I told you, somebody told media from the multinational pharmaceutical companies that how patent is required. So the campaign started. And then the actual companies and their people, officers, research and development people, they made presentations to the government. So it all worked together. Now, when there was a campaign by multinational pharmaceutical companies, immediately a counter campaign also started by the Indian big companies. And they were opposed to patent in a way. Somehow when the Patent Act was done in 1995, I'm talking of 1995, and it actually came into effect in 2005. So a lot of media coverage had happened and media played some important role from both the sides. And as a result of that, we had a Patent Act, but at the same time to take care of the concerns of the Indian companies also, one section in that act was added. So that is one area we can say where media played an important role.
Very tangible example.
And recently there was an incident, there's one pharmaceutical company which came out with, I think everybody knows that the controversy, so there is no harm in taking names also. There is a new eye drop that was developed by a pharmaceutical company called Press UV. And it was basically to improve the eyesight of all the people who are above 40, 50, who start losing little bit the problems are there in the eyesight, particularly reading. There was a very good publicity given. One of my friend who is from the research and development field in pharmaceutical, doctor, he was their consultant, the pharmaceutical company's consultant, and he told me that we got really good publicity from the press. And it really good work, and they got all the sanctions from Director General of Pharmacy, etc., from the government. And then they realized it that the authorities felt that all the news that came, that it was interpreted like this, that this can do away with your spectacles. And that is where the authorities found the problem. And they said, from tomorrow onwards, doctors will start prescribing it for only removing the spectacles. And that's why now it has been the permission given that has been suspended till now, and more research is being, more examination is being doing into that. So that is another example where good publicity was given, but that ultimately harmed the product, and the government had to change the policy.
Had to intervene. Taking a note from that, we are all aware of...
Can I just
yes,
intervene
please.
for 1 minute over here? It's important that this young audience is also aware of these things. If you remember, sometime in the 80s, the horrific Bhagalpur blindings case came to light. In the light, it was a media report that first brought to light this horrific example of acid being poured into the eyes of prisoners, and they were blinded. So it became famous as the Bhagalpur blindings case, and it became cover stories for the news magazines of the time. It became page one news across India. And it resulted in a lot of changes in prison administration in the country. A lot of laws were changed. I'll take a more recent example. After Nirbhaya happened, as you know, there was enormous outrage. And this was a combination of public opinion and media coverage that pushed forward some fairly dramatic changes in rape laws in India. So there are examples when a combination of enormous public
And we
opinion...
can also take example of RTI Act. I mean, this is one of the recent examples.
RTI Act as well, yeah. So there is a convergence of forces when media covers something, when public opinion picks it up, and then there is a public interest in the case which forces the hands of government to make substantial changes.
One more example I can give, and in that story I was directly involved. There was a case in Marathwada where a Dalit youth called Lambada Sounding he was a police patil of the village, and he was passing on the road and suddenly the rain started. So he took shelter nearby, and that happened to be the temple. And there was a meeting of high caste Hindus was going on in the temple. So they saw a Dalit entering the temple, and he was stoned to death.
Oh.
And it was shown as the snake bite death. So one of the human rights organization from Mumbai, they came to know about it, and they sent an investigation team, and they came out with the report that it was nothing like snake bite, but he was stoned to death. So I gave that story, and it so happened that, sometimes you also never know in newspapers that how a story will shape up. Many a times it is sometimes buried inside. That day it so happened that my news editor in Mumbai, I was in Times of India, he published it as the second lead, and as usual, every copy goes to all editions. So accordingly, one copy went to type copy went to our Delhi edition also, and our Delhi news editor also felt that this was an important story, and he published it as a lead. So that created, and Parliament was on, so that created hangama in the Parliament. All scheduled caste and scheduled tribe MPs took a morcha to Rashtrapati Bhavan, forgetting their party differences, and gave a memorandum to the presidents for the protection of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. This was in Narasimha Rao government was there, and finally Narasimha Rao government had to come out with some 10-point agenda of protection of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. So this all happened because of this one story.
What an excellent example where humanity rose above journalism and politics. Like you said, they forgot their political differences and they got together. So a lot of what we are hearing today, there are undercurrents of misinformation, like in this temple death. It was said to be a snake bite. What do you think is the role fact-checking networks are playing alongside journalism?
Fact-checking networks like Alt News and so on, boom.
Those, the ones that are...
Absolutely. I think they, along with the rise of the digital age, along with the rise of digital journalism as we see it and social media as I see it, this had to happen. This had to happen. It was the logical response to this. In fact, I believe that there must be many, many more such fact-checking organizations. The astonishing thing for me is that I remember some years ago when Alt News first came into being, and I started following Alt News when they would fact check everything, right? They would go back to the source of a video, they would go back to a source of a news, and they'll say, this is right. And I heaved a sigh of relief, and I said, oh my God, fact-checking is here. So fake news is now going to come to an end. How naive I was. It did not come to an end.
They started their own fact-checking.
Not only that, the fact-checker was now accused of being a fake news producer. So it was like a dramatic, turn, a circle, where here I was thinking fake news is going to come to an end, but it just took a turn. But more fact-checking websites have come up. It's becoming impossible to get away with complete impunity with fake news, and I do think they play a very, very important role.
I think we'll have to have a certified, authorized fact-checking news agency.
There is no
certified by
fact-checking
Press
network.
Council of India or something.
No, there is.
There is
a fact-checking network, and the Google actually takes a lot of workshops. In fact, I think that if they can arrange it for the students, Google take a lot of workshops. They give you the tools to understand whether.
One in Press Club also.
Yeah, I mean, lot of work. I have attended a couple of workshops with Google, and but I think that the fact checking in India is still at a very nascent stage because during my stay for Chevening, I was interning with a fact checking network called a kind of a startup called Full Facts. And they had a very interesting model. I don't think that in India it is even possible to have it. But because right now we are looking only at the fact checking of the videos and the tweets and the pictures and all that stuff. We are not fact checking the information, specifically the information which is spoken by our leaders, the politicians, in public rallies, in public meetings,
Which is
in the press
designed to
conferences
mislead,
and all that
manipulate.
stuff. And now the time has come to have a separate unit for that, because that's why I call it, it's a very nascent stage, because now the fact checking is possible by anyone who is using the Google. There are very simple tools to understand whether a particular video or a photograph is recent or it's old and all that stuff. Everybody goes on the search engine. But very interestingly, what I saw there is that was the time when the UK elections were at the peak. The campaign was at the peak. And they were actually live fact-checking the release of the manifestos by the political parties. And very interestingly, they used to send an email to the political parties to ask, say for an example, the example of, say, Maharashtra elections, where both the alliances promised that they will be giving they promised 2,100 rupees to women whose family's earnings are below 2.5 lakh rupees, and the other alliance promised 3,000 rupees for them. So they used to send an email to the political parties to ask from where you will be arranging you're going to raise the money. Do the state exchequer has that kind of money to fund such kind of schemes, and how long you can continue it and all that stuff.
Imagine if this was done, now it's rolled back.
Nobody
right?
will even answer us.
Yeah.
So nobody will even answer us at this point of time. So that is a very interesting way of doing a fact check, and that is where the misinformation is flowing. And that fact checking is still not happening in India. Maybe it requires a lot of network, that continuous monitoring and immediate redressal to any of the claim made by the politician, and that is something which is really tough. We tried to do it during election. But it is actually tough because India is a very large country. Everybody keeps talking at some nook and corner somewhere, and it's very difficult to get it. It's not very organized the way it should be. And most importantly, the people who are sitting at important places, they think that most of the time they think that they are entitled not to answer a question raised by somebody else. So, aap kaun hai puchne wale type.
Yeah.
That kind of attitude is also there. But if that fact-checking comes to India, that is going to be more beneficial for...
If you remember, Sahil, they also started doing fact-checking as the presidential debate was going on
Yes,
in the US.
that's what they do. Yeah. If somebody has made a claim...
Then it comes in a ticker tape.
And it was very simple. They used to do it on some 4 to 5 parameters. Say, for an example, the foreign affairs, economy, I think health, because UK was, as a health, it's a big thing. And then I think law and order and all that stuff. Some 3-4 parameters they used to do the fact check on. The claims made on those parameters. So that is something which is really interesting, I have not seen it in India. And we try to implement it, but practically it's very difficult, at this point of time.
It's also an editorial responsibility which one should take very seriously in this day and age. So suppose a politician makes a speech and makes a lot of claims in it which can be countered, then you can't just publish or print that speech as is and then say, I have done my duty, I have reported the speech and I've printed it. I think that becomes very, very misleading for the public. So then it becomes an editorial responsibility to say, were those numbers right? You don't have to, it's not my opinion. But at the end of it, I have to say that X agency found that these numbers are actually so much. That, that this is like he said, this is the amount of money being promised, but always state your sources, don't make wild claims, but state your sources, go back to the basics, find the real numbers, and put them out there as a concluding paragraph on when you're reporting speeches or when you're reporting campaign claims.
Now, you both have taken some specific examples, But my observation is that our politicians are known for years for speaking in a very vague manner. I mean, the very specific thing is that a minister who is responsible for something, he will say that this should be done. But who is going to do it? You are supposed going to do it. As if Home Minister is saying that, we should remove the burden on the police. There is too much burden on the police. Okay, remove it. You are Home Minister. I am not Home Minister. So why are you telling me? So this has been talking like that, the politicians and the ministers particularly about their department, they have been talking like that. Here now you have taken some specific examples.
मैं बोल रही हूँ मिलिंद कि that kind of promises that politicians make, wild promise, I'm willing to go with it. I think it's a politician's job to exaggerate and claim that when he or she comes into power, he or she is going to remove, all problems, corruption will go away, everything will be. I think that kind of leeway I'm willing to give you. But when you play with data, when you give me wrong data, specific information and data, then we have to come.
It's like simple thing. Like we did a story on. Apparently now the Maharashtra government has said that they will be working on some love jihad law. And a minister during the last government's tenure made a claim that there are some more than 1 lakh love jihad cases in the... So the simple thing what we did is to ask him that from where you have got this data. And the minister didn't have a data for that. So the point is that these are the specific fact checks what that journalists should be doing, because now it is becoming rampant. And earlier there was some kind of a sanctity of, suppose a minister is making a statement. So that's why the press conferences used to happen after all the information is gathered. Even the police, the police commissioner, or say somebody who is sitting in as an authority used to take a press conference or talk to media only after he or she has a certain information with them. But now the kind of claims which has been made, so that is something what can work on a lot.
As he says, police officers or ministers, when they gave press conferences, they would also have their experts sitting next to them, who would keep providing them with actual data.
There were dossiers, there was preparation.
Yeah.
Which is, and like you said, that has changed. Today, loose statements are being made, arbit numbers like that 1 lakh. Where is that 1 lakh coming from? And sometimes the numbers are not even logical.
There is enormous deliberation behind making such statements. There is enormous deliberation. This is not happening accidentally, and it's not happening innocently. When you make claims and you state wild numbers of this kind, which have grave repercussions on society, you do it because you know it will go viral immediately. And by the time the fact check happens, by the time legacy media or some other responsible media person responds, the fake number has already, gone places.
So people belief is also more in that. That's the main problem in such kind of statements.
That is right. I mean, this UK faced during Brexit. I mean, the kind of numbers which was actually given by the number of immigrants given by the government found to be completely inaccurate. I mean, the people believe that it is not accurate, and that's why the Brexit happened. And we are already facing a lot of economic issues because of that. So that is very important. That is where the role of the media also becomes very important. That whether actually you just believe the numbers given by the government, or you report those numbers and do your own fact-checking, because finally it has come from the government, you have to report to it because the government has, somebody sitting as a minister is mentioning it. But you can always think and do your own fact-checking as well, because it's really interesting to see how it happens. Yeah.
And like Vaishna said, that is the editorial responsibility to analyze, to ask questions, and not just, because when you carry a speech as is that even journalism?
So if you go back to the first question you asked, this is what has changed, if we have come to this.
Sure. So to conclude, I want to get into a slightly idealistic zone and ask you, if each of you can identify one major change that could improve this relationship, interdependence between media, politics, and the public, what would it be? And go full green light, like expect the best. And if you could contribute your ideas on one change.
I think the most important thing is that in all these three aspects, the trustworthiness needs to be increased. And for that, a constant training is required. Uh, I'm not sure what is the situation currently, but I can say a few years back, journalists, the moment you join the profession, you are considered to be expert in all the fields. And you are never sent for any kind of training workshop or any kind of, in all other fields, if you take a human resource person from your office, he will be sent every 2 years to some kind of a workshop.
There is L&D, which is...
So there is no such any training for journalists. Similarly, we should also consider about the politicians, that once they get elected in any position, how many such workshops, if they are organized, they attend. They will come, they will inaugurate the workshops and they will go, but they will never participate. So what is the level of knowledge about the new things they are having? Like journalists also, I mean, it is the same thing. And the third part is the public, where I feel that, and this I have been saying for many years, I prepared a plan also for that, we should conduct classes for media literacy. This is very essential. How to do it is a very difficult task. It's not so easy, I know that. But people also should be needed to be told that how to look at the media. Then this kind of problems will be solved, that you throw some figure and it will go immediately viral and everybody will start believing in it. So by training, we should bring professionalism. And by professionalism, we should bring trustworthiness. That is the most important part that should happen in all these factors.
Sure.
Such a difficult question, isn't it?
Yeah, but go full green light. Don't worry about execution. We are doing idealism here.
Idealism is what we should do, considering the students in the room. See, in an ideal world, for a democracy to function the way it should, as I began by saying, the four pillars have to do their jobs, and I think the four pillars in India have right now failed us pretty sadly. The legislature has failed us, executive, the judiciary certainly, and the media absolutely. I mean, the sort of things, the sort of capitulation that broadcast media has done is unbelievable, and it's tragic is the word I would use. In an ideal world, each pillar would have to do what it was set up for, and which means an independent and fully functioning media without political pressure. So politicians have to remove their foot off the pedal. They have to take their foot off the head of media persons in order to let them do their work. The kind of pressure that is there today in terms of finance, in terms of advertising support, in terms of punitive action against erring journalists and so on and so forth, has created an atmosphere of fear. Right, and you all know that a journalist, in fact, recently was murdered fairly brutally in Bihar. Was it Chhattisgarh? Yeah. So so someone somewhere always wants some news to be suppressed. Okay, and I can't quite remember who said it, that the journalist's job is to publish something that somebody somewhere doesn't want published. Everything else is PR. So in an ideal world, allow this free press to function freely, allow them to criticize government. Nothing is going to happen to government because 3 critical articles are written about it. It's a powerful organization. It can continue to function. Government can make the changes it deems fit. It can continue where it feels it doesn't want to change. But there should be an interactive, sort of feedback mechanism built into the ways in which government works and all of the arms of government work. That feedback mechanism is obviously the public, and the public responds in various ways. Right now, the public is in a strange space. Yeah? We're in this Gen Z, which is in a very strange sort of bubble where it can't really see beyond itself and its device. Right? So you are enclosed in the space where, to make sense of the larger world around you, that capacity itself has been dimmed. And I think it is the job of, teachers and professors and journalists and all of us sitting in this room to see how we can once more revive a spirit of inquiry among our people, among these young people here, a spirit of inquiry, a spirit of curiosity, a spirit of critical thinking that will allow you to question everything you read and demand answers where you think you need answers. I think that spirit of critical questioning is where
Vaishna, I love the choice of words. When I say this, I think I sound pretty harsh, but I'm going to borrow your words when you said their capacity is dimmed and they cannot see beyond the device. I'm going to borrow these words, very nicely said. Yes, Sahil.
Yeah, I mean, they don't see anything other than their device, but what they see in the device is actually more, I think that is more important. But it is actually a very tough question. But you know what? We have always been told, because I have not worked in a print media. I have directly come into the television. So we were like directly thrown into like a sea.
Thrown to the wolves.
No, directly thrown into the sea, because because the senior people like Milind, Kokje never wanted to work in television. They didn't want to do running around on TV and all that stuff. So we directly got a chance to go to the topmost people in the state and the country and got a chance to do their interviews and ask them questions and all that stuff. Basically, what I meant to say is that a lot of times when such situation arises, I totally understand what Vaishna was mentioning about. But I think that if you just go back to the basic reporting, just report your story. That shouldn't stop. The rest of the things, whether it will happen, not happen, is not in your hand. Whether the Prime Minister, Chief Minister or a Minister will take press conference, take questions or will not take questions, we don't know. But at least report your story. If the story is reported, it will definitely make an impact. Somewhere people watch it, people understand. See, finally the people are not fooled. When the media was a very small fraternity, even then people have voted against the emergency. So it is not something which has not happened before. So just report your story. I always tell people that, okay, just report the story. I mean, you don't need to have a particular interviewer go and ask a question, tough question and all that stuff. Just report a basic story that this is what is happening.
Trigger that.
Yeah.
Roll the ball.
Yeah, just roll the ball. Even if that happens, that will solve most of the problems. So if you ask me, ideally, which is also not happening at this point of time. Most of the time, the bigger media is losing a big picture, and that is why most of the mainstream media got the election predictions wrong. That is because they are not on the ground. If you're not on the ground, you will not report the proper story. And so that's why you need to go back to the basics. You need to go on the ground. Your ear needs to be on the ground. You need to understand, interact with people more. And if that happens, the rest of the things will fall in place. It's what I think should happen.
I would like to add one small point there, particularly regarding the media. I think the decision controls in the media should change hands from the brand managers to the editors, which has been changed in 90s from editors to the brand managers. I will quote one book here. James Fallow, American journalist, has written a very good book called Breaking News. And he has analyzed the fall of American automobile, particularly car industry. And he said that the problem with the American car industry was that the decision makers became, the finance managers became the decision makers. So instead of technocrats, the engineers deciding the thickness of the steel of the car, some finance person started deciding it, and his intention was that reduce the cost. He was only thinking from that perspective. He said, fortunately, American automobile industry understood its mistake, and it transferred the decision-making rights again back to the technocrats. He said, unfortunately, in media, we have not learnt it yet. So once again, the editors should become important and not the brand managers. I think that itself will change many things.
To tell you at this point that in Frontline, I'm very proud to say that I don't have to look over my shoulder at all. I publish exactly what I want to publish, and I think it's very hard to make that statement, as he said, in today's world. So quite happy to say that.
Very, very happy to hear that. So some really high quality conversations here, and We have a 12:20 hard stop, so I will conclude now. But having said that, for the young audience here, while we've had the privilege of hearing such senior journalists talk about how public and politics and journalism comes together, but there is a responsibility that is on your gentle 20-year-old shoulders as well. You are the public, right, today and the public of tomorrow. Please filter what you're consuming, your food, your information, media, because remember, people are serving you because you like it. So it's very easy to be all young and angry and say, media aise kar rahi hai, politicians aise hai. You're being served what you like. So filter what you're consuming, filter the information. Don't get into blind likes. Respect correct, verified, journalistic freedom and information. And that's what will come to you more and more of. So that's my closing remark. And I want to thank the panelists again. Once again, I will repeat myself, very high quality conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, guests. Before we move ahead, we would like to welcome Dr. Vidyarthi Upadhyay, Vice President of Dainik Bhaskar. Now that our session has drawn to an end, we would love to show our heartfelt appreciation to our esteemed panel members.
We would like to request the head of our department, Ms. Richa Chaudhary, to please come on stage.
While we wait for Richa, anyone quick questions? Yes.
Actually, I had so many questions. The session was wonderful. I was taking notes continuously. And I just quickly noted down a question. Since you mentioned Mukesh Chandra's death in Chhattisgarh. Yesterday, I think Raghavendra Bajpai, another journalist, was murdered in Chhattisgarh. And I have a question regarding that. So, despite these alarming incidents, the media has been silent. So, I would like to ask, how do you see this pattern in relation to politics? How do you see this pattern in relation to journalism and politics?
Well, this has happened even before. I mean, but you have to understand one thing. The biggest problem is at the very local level. The more you go down, the district stringer or a district correspondent is, actually is more worried at this point of time, because he's constantly being watched by the local MLA and the local politics and all that stuff. Sitting in Mumbai, city like Mumbai or in Delhi, we still have some kind of influence over the politicians. They will think twice before doing anything of that sort. But the district correspondent, that is what happened with the Mukesh Chandrakar, the death threat and whatever is the followed and everything. So I mean, the only thing what anybody can do is to amplify such kind of whenever such kind of thing happens. And even yesterday in Mumbai, one digital journalist, he was arrested by police because he did a story against a minister about a woman complaining about a minister. Jaikumar Gore, Chetan Kharat, he was arrested yesterday by the Mumbai police. So this has happened even in Mumbai. He is running one digital platform in Marathi in Satara. So the guy is arrested yesterday. So these are the constant threats what everybody is facing at this point of time, and the local correspondent is at the mercy of the local politician, and that nexus is very difficult to break. There is no even ideal answer to this, to be precise. I mean, but it is a very tough situation at this point, for sure, and that the economics of journalism also works in that way, because that local correspondent, I know a lot of newspapers who ask their local correspondents to go and fetch advertisements from the local politicians. So he has to have a good relationship and rapport with the local politicians, and that is something which is really bizarre. I mean, and there is no answer to this. I mean, either somebody should stop it, the management themselves should stop it to make them free and report fairly, But that is what is not happening at this point.
Yeah, I will take forward from you. I'll give you one example here how management sometimes compel their stringers particularly to be dependent on the local leaders, politicians, etc. This is related to the press. So the reporters were sending the news items to this particular newspaper on fax by the time fax had come. So one day somebody from account department issued a fatwa, and see the logic, a grand logic, I mean, I must accept that. He said, whenever we buy something from any outside party, it is the job of that party to deliver that, whatever we demand, to our office. Correct? So same is applicable to the news. So we are paying you for the news. So it is your job to deliver news to us. So we will stop paying you separate fax charges. Now a person who is already earning on the centimeter rate basis, and that time, nobody had a fax in his house, so everybody had to go to the fax center, pay 10 rupees. Sometimes one fax will not be good enough, so you have to make it 2-3 times. So who will spend 10 rupees, 20 rupees, 30 rupees per news? So what way the found out was by the reporters was that very simple. मैं आपके कॉलेज में आया हूँ, आपकी न्यूज़ देनी है, तो you pay for it. So this is how managements make sometimes stringers depend on the local people. Another problem is that in a small village, as he rightly said, in Mumbai, Pune, we never experienced this problem, but your life is many a time dependent on, in various ways, on your local leader. Because your child, if he has to take education, he has to go into the school which is run by an MLA. So how can you take a position against that MLA? That becomes very difficult for the person.
Good questions, thank you. But we have a hard stop, so if we can, we were waiting for Richa, I think. Yeah.
Ms. Richa Chaudhary, we would like to invite her onto the stage to felicitate our guests. Mr. Sahil Joshi. Thank you, sir. Ms. Vaishna Roy. Thank you, ma'am. Now we would like to request Mr. Ashish Tambe, Director, PR, SVU, to please come on stage to felicitate our other guests. Dr. Milind Kokje. Thank you, sir. And Ms. Chetna Israni. Sir. Thank you so much, sir.
We extend our immense gratitude to our esteemed panelists and Ms. Chetna Israni uh, for your perspectives that have truly enriched this discussion. Thank you for your time, knowledge, and contributions.
Everyone, please be seated. We still have a bit of the event left. Guys, if you would. Also, here is the QR code for the feedback form. Please fill it up and make sure to add all your inputs into it. We would appreciate it greatly.
Hello, everyone. It is not a break. We will start the session shortly. Hello, everyone. We do not have a break right now. We have another session starting right away. So please make sure to fill this feedback form for your certificate for this session.
Okay, ma'am. आगे किधर लेके जा रहे हैं सेंटर का हो गया मैंने कर लिया था नहीं
All the students have to sit in the auditorium quickly. We are starting in a minute. Those who are roaming outside, ask them to come in. हॅलो 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 ए थोडा मॉनिटरमध्ये दे ना मला आवाज. हॅलो 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 नमस्कार. Everyone please be seated, those who are there at corridor. मिहिर 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 आए थे हाँ बाहर कोई है सिर्फ वो बाइट लेने वाले 2 लोग को छोड़ के बाकी सबको अंदर भेजे इधर कौन है हाँ ठीक है हाँ ते दोघांचे 2-2 आहेत मैं प्रत्येक एका गेस्टला 2 एका गेस्टला 2 असे 4 आहेत ते पण मला
Good afternoon, everyone. So I hope you all settled in. Hi, ma'am. My name is Sahil. I'm from the second year BMCJ. Well, it was a wonderful session, all of the high impactful people. It was a very, a conversation filled with banter, but with professionalism as well. And I would really request you to transcend that with the students as well. A Q&A is something we've been waiting for. And especially after listening to whatever you've discussed, after understanding how everything has been working and the major shift from a decade or two, we have a lot of questions, but before they ask the questions, I would like you to set a statement for them so, they could prepare something or come up with better questions for you to ask to.
Excellent idea, actually. I was actually prepared to give you a talk, but I don't want to bore you. I'll keep rambling on stage and sound like one of your professors, and I'm sure you don't want me to sound like that. Before we go ahead, this is Frontline. This is the magazine that I edit. It's a fortnightly magazine, 114 pages, hard work, but worth it. The talk that I was supposed to give today was about, truth over sensation, challenge of responsible reporting, public sphere in the digital age, etc., etc. Are we more connected? Are we more divided? Now, these are all very distinct areas, and these are all very, very important areas, and they are interconnected areas. So, if I sort of pare it down to the basics, we're looking at truth, lies, and the digital age, right? This is what we are broadly talking about, and in what ways are these aspects of the digital age feeding into our being connected or disconnected with reality, with each other, etc., etc. I'm just going to tell you to set the agenda for 2 minutes, and then I'll throw it open for questions. Don't feel constrained to question only about what I'm speaking. Ask me questions about anything that you feel like asking about. Information, this is the information age. Information is coming to us at enormous speed, you know, we're just being blasted with information all the time, and we don't have time to process it. At a time like this, when information is like a steady open tap of water literally flooding us, truth, the idea of truth becomes flexible. Why does it become flexible? Because truth becomes disputable, and truth becomes blurred. The lines between truth and between lies becomes blurred, right? When facts are no longer the foundation of debate, when you no longer are limited by the idea of fact that a table has this table has 3 legs or 4 legs, that this is made of wood. These are facts, these are concrete facts. When you are no longer bound by these facts in order to make your arguments, in order to establish your point, then what is it replaced by? It is replaced by emotion, it is replaced by rhetoric, it is replaced by, therefore, manufactured stories based on the emotion. We live today in a post-truth world. We live today in a world where we are speaking of alternate facts. I grew up at a time when I had just one fact in front of me, right? This is a glass of water. Now I'm being told that there are alternate facts, that there are alternate ways to read the universe. This then is the question in front of us, which is challenging our understanding of reality itself. And when our idea and perception of reality is challenged, and how do we make decisions? What do we take away with us, and upon what do we base our decision? It is therefore becoming narrowed down into personal beliefs. What do I believe? And if I believe that this gentleman on the stage with me is a bad man, I state it as a fact. I don't need to produce any proof of his badness or his goodness. It's only my personal belief. And you then counter it by saying, no, he's a great man. And you too don't have any facts to bolster your opinion. So all of the ways in which we consume information in the digital age is being reduced into personal beliefs and personal emotions, and that is where the danger is. That is why we are now talking about truth, lies, and the digital age. This is, of course, a sweeping technological change in front of us. I do not believe that we should reject any technology. Technology will come, science will advance, and we are in a moment of enormous change. We are on the cusp of a completely new way of understanding the world, and the people in this room, the people in this audience, you people are going to be probably leading this change. My only ask is that you lead this change responsibility, not to reject technology, not to reject social media, not to believe that you must go back into a print magazine. I quite understand that you have grown up in an age when print has ceased to matter. If you are consuming this as, say, Frontline.com, go ahead and consume it. If you're going to consume a reel, go ahead and consume it. If you're going to consume a WhatsApp forward, go ahead and consume it. But I'm just asking you to be more responsible and more alert and more questioning in the ways in which you consume information. So let's talk about, this is broadly what I was setting as an agenda, but like I said, let's not constrain ourselves to this. Go ahead and ask me anything.
I'll be a bit selfish over here and ask my question first. And one thing I can assure you, I'm definitely not a bad guy. So, you know, ma'am,
Proof.
I guess the people are the proof over here, a lot of friends and a lot of teachers as well. So my question is actually, you know, I believe perception is right now a definitive factor in deriving how something that has been portrayed will actually affect the mass audience. To give a very definitive example, all these controversies which happen on freedom of speech, what my take on that is, the way you perceive it, you will indirectly, you know, pass it on to the other person. And then those masses will, you know, create it. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Should it be banned? Should it be, you know, referred to? Or let's just keep it aside. How do you think this perception term is actually creating more problems, or is it a problem solver? And how is journalists or any kind of journalism in particular utilizing it for the people?
your perception of an issue can shape the way you understand an issue for sure, but it cannot shape your understanding in a definitive way, because your perception itself might be flawed. So you have to keep questioning yourself and questioning your perception and asking what your perception is based on, and therefore then forming an opinion. Just the mere fact that I have an opinion about something cannot make me an expert, cannot allow me to disseminate this as fact. Opinion cannot be fact, right? So perceptions are often behind opinions. So you see somebody and you think that this man looks bad or looks good, looks intelligent or looks foolish, and you form a perception about this person, or you form a perception that you look at, say, you say read 5 posts that are forwarded to you on your WhatsApp message, and you believe that the freedom of speech is not threatened in India, right? You form a perception. Look, here are 5 people telling me that freedom of speech is completely alive and kicking in India, and so my perception is that all is well. This will be a limited perception. You're going to have to dig into more people, and you're going to have to ask for a wide range of opinions. And if having spoken to 20, or not just spoken to 20 people, but read 20 different kinds of books or reports or whatever, after that you can continue to form an opinion. You can then have an opinion, and it's a valid opinion. But that opinion cannot be based on perception. It has to be backed by some sort of reading, some sort of solid understanding of what you are talking about.
Any other questions that you have framed up? You know what, I'll give you a minute to frame up the questions. I still have one more question in mind. So, oh, sorry, you can ask for sure.
So feel free to ask about the previous session itself. I know a lot of hands went up and we ran out of time.
Hi, good afternoon, ma'am. I actually had a question that relates to the previous session as well as the current statement that you gave regarding the truth lies in the digital age. Currently, there's this controversial talk between Trump and Zelensky that's been going around a lot. You know, it's been discussed a lot. And I just wanted to know, with respect to the previous session's title, who is shaping the opinions on that particular topic, according to you? Like, who's the main mastermind behind all the opinions or the perceptions that's been fed to the people or the audience, as we like to call? Thank you.
Very interesting question, because that Trump-Zelensky sort of showdown in the White House has been on top of all our minds for a long time. And it's interesting because it is an example of so many things that are happening today. Everything is converging at that one moment. Now, what is your immediate response? Your immediate response is that Donald Trump, who's a master showman, who's a master PR guy, he has rigged this in some ways in order to humiliate Zelensky in public in front of the media and gotten away with it. And then you form your opinion based on this immediate response. There's a lot of tweets that go out immediately. There is a lot of posts that go out immediately, which sort of reinforce this idea of Zelensky having become a victim in that situation. Now you dig a little deeper and you ask yourself, is this an immediate response from me that Trump, bad guy, Zelensky, good guy, and I have finished my analysis of this interaction between the two of them? No, you can't. Why not? Because there are shades and shades to it. There are nuances and nuances of meaning in this. So you have to now look at the second layer. The second layer is this. Clearly, from everything that went ahead of that conversation, Trump and Zelensky, Trump's team and Zelensky's team had decided that there was going to be a deal. And that deal would involve the US getting rights to some minerals in Ukraine, in return for which Ukraine would sign a peace deal, right? There was some understanding. Based on that understanding, they brought it to the point of having an open press conference at the White House. Now, what was Zelensky doing at this point? Zelensky too was playing the media. Why was he playing the media? Because he realized that behind closed doors, he was getting a deal that was not very good for him. He was giving much more than what he was getting. Therefore, he wanted to turn public opinion in his favor, and therefore he conducted an argument in public. He raised the question in order to do the negotiating part of it, which is usually a closed door process, in public. So Zelensky too was playing the media, and he too was creating a narrative where he wanted to bring out his points. I want continued security assurances from Trump and from Europe. Trump was not willing to be pushed into this situation where he promises any kind of security to Ukraine, because Trump's plan is to pull US troops and US funds out of Ukraine. So these are the two. Now you've already come to the second layer. Now there are more layers. There's a third layer. Now the third layer will be what Zelensky kept saying in that during that interaction. And what did he keep saying? He said, but Russia invaded Ukraine first. Now immediately one accepts the statement, and one can accept this as the gospel truth. Yeah, of course, we all saw it happen. We know that Trump invaded Ukraine, and so nothing wrong with it. Let's accept it. Let's continue from here. But what is the mistake? What is the trap we'll be falling into over there? You will be falling into the same trap where you focus, for example, in the Gaza situation, you focus only on the act of the Hamas attack, right? And you behave or you respond to this situation, to the war in Gaza, from a viewpoint that history began when Hamas attacked. History did not begin then, right? There is an enormous amount of very, very painful history that goes back into the Israel and Palestinian conflict. Similarly, when Russia attacked Ukraine, history did not begin there. There is again a long history of Western imperialistic interests at play, which have shaped the narrative. There was a clear understanding given by the West to Russia that NATO would not expand eastwards. But NATO kept expanding eastwards. Now finally, Ukraine, right on Russia's border, if NATO steps into Ukraine and Ukraine decides to take NATO membership, then Russia gets threatened because NATO is now right on its border. So there was a lot of behind the scenes conversation where Russia kept pushing back, saying, don't bring NATO here, don't bring NATO here. But that was not accepted. Europe and the US kept pushing. Therefore, you ultimately came to a stage where Russia, after making a lot of noise, went ahead and invaded Ukraine. So then, therefore, you have to ask questions. Before Zelensky, who was in power? Before him, who was in power? Who took that man out of power? Were there riots in Ukraine? Who organized those riots? Who's the mastermind behind those riots? Where did the money come into those riots, which pushed this man out of power and then brought in Zelensky and his immediate predecessor into power? What were the motives for those? And therefore, then you step back and you say, oh, hello, now this is happening. Now Trump is singing a different song from what his predecessor Biden was singing. And therefore, so as you've seen, one press interaction is just giving you one flat picture, right? Zelensky, sad victim, and Trump, evil showman. Step back, and you keep peeling it off, like you peel off the layers of an onion, and you try to keep finding what motivates what in a succession of events.
Hi ma'am, this is Vansh. So there are two sets of questions. How do you perceive the bias in mainstream media supporting a particular group as compared to the digital media being open and independent about what they are showcasing? And B, how do you how do you see the future of the mainstream media versus the digital media, considering the short form news content versus the long form news content, considering the business perspective for a news outlet? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Vansh. Those are very important questions, and questions that very soon, those of you who are going to step into journalism after your course here, you're going to be facing many of those questions. So let's look at it as three pillars. There you've got the legacy media, you've still got a lot of broadsheet newspapers, you've still got magazines. Then you've got television media, broadcast media, and then you've got digital media, which is sort of the latest entrance into the field, which has completely swept all competition aside, right? But there continue to be reasons why legacy media continues to exist, and we explored some of those reasons in an earlier conversation when we spoke of fact-checking, when we spoke of the role of verification, when we spoke of this idea of a medium between the news source and the consumer of the news, who you can trust, that trustworthy medium. So there are reasons why all three right now perform important functions. Now, one of the reasons why legacy media, like the ones I represent, and there are a whole bunch of legacy media, right? There are big media houses which have newspapers and print newspapers and print magazines. There is a reason why the people lost trust in them, and that reason is exactly what you said, bias. Now, that bias came in many forms. It could have been straightforward political bias, where you were fairly well entrenched in a particular political party's ecosystem, and you ceased to see yourself as separate from that ecosystem, and you became, in effect, a mouthpiece for that existing ecosystem. So people lost trust in you. People realized that you were not going to be reporting the truth. Your truth is going to be very much colored by the interests that you are so close with. You can't sleep in somebody's bed and then expect to be reporting against that person, right? So that was one layer of bias. There was another layer of bias, which is an important layer of bias, which is the layer of bias of elitism, right? In our earlier conversation, we spoke of a journalist in Chhattisgarh who got murdered, and many such murders have happened in small towns across India. One of the most important and one of the most dangerous, one of the most courageous sort of journalism jobs are being done by these journalists in these small regional centers of India. Many of them not in the English medium, many of them in regional languages, but regional language journalists and regional language journalism is one of the bravest facets of journalism today. Because, like my co-panelist said, the headquarters in big urban centers tend to look at news through their own prism of elitism, through their own prism of urban bias. They are not even looking, editors sitting in Bombay, editors sitting in Delhi, are not looking beyond their glass walls into what is happening in India, across India, in the smallest world. So there is that accusation as well of elitist bias. Then there is casteist bias. Who is occupying the big seats of power in media, right? Which caste do they represent? Are they upper class? Are they upper caste? And therefore, how are you becoming the voice of the underprivileged in India? Are you at all? Are you even interested in it? So there are all these biases built into it. There is a reason why people lost trust, okay? It is now the task to regain that trust. How do you regain that trust? How do you rebuild a relationship where you let people know that you are actually giving them news that is unfiltered, right? Into this gap came first, broadcast medium came into this gap first because of purely the idea that it was instant, it was live. As an accident, road accident is happening, it was given to you live and you could consume it, and therefore it came into prominence. Social media is a different kind of need it's filling. Coming into a gap where it's saying that each one of us is important, each one of us has got a camera, each one of us is going to tell you the news. But like I said before, there are inherent biases in this system as well. This is not some fearless independent journalism it is not always the fearless independent journalism that we imagine it to be. It has its own sets of problems because like he said at the beginning, he's reporting the news, I'm reporting the news, she's reporting the news. Each one of us has just got our own individual biases and perceptions. We just come forward with an opinion. We come forward with a half-baked understanding of what we are seeing, and we feed it, right? So this is sort of the ways in which each of these aspects of media today are combating as well as combating and therefore coming up with a lovely, good, great alternative, but also coming with their own sets of failures, which are then having to be balanced by other aspects. So it's a sort of a mix, and it's a sort of a balancing act, an awkward balancing act. What was the second part of your question? I'm sorry, something about, who asked that question? I forget.
Yeah, so it was about the future of the mainstream media versus the digital media, because the rise of like short form news content. So like how will it evolve?
Short form and long form, there is a return to long form now. Return to long form simply because people are beginning to realize that they need someone to analyze the news for them. So today I can get an immediate tweet saying Zelensky, Trump had a spat in the White House, but somebody has to sit down and go into the nitty-gritty of that spat and explain it. So they're coming back to long form, they're coming back to analysis in big way. I'll give you an example. During COVID, you know what happened? COVID times, there was this all of you know, no? There was a burst of information. Everybody was a doctor. Everybody had a piece of advice. Everybody was telling you gargle. Somebody was saying take same steam inhalation. Someone was saying eat neem leaves. Somebody else was saying drink lemon juice. It was like a barrage of information. A lot of it was just rubbish, right? And people didn't know. People were in a state of fear. And so anybody said any damn thing and they accepted. They started drinking lime juice. The next day they started drinking neem juice. All sorts of nonsense was going on. In fact, I'll give you an anecdote. Doctors reported during COVID that this advice to take inhalation had become so viral and people were taking it so literally that doctors were treating cases and wasting their time treating cases not of people who came with COVID, but of people whose nasal passages were scalded because of taking so much steam inhalation continuously. So they came with larynxes and nasal passages scalded to the doctors. That's the sort of impact that kind of fake news was having. And during COVID, mainstream legacy media, like say New York Times or Washington Post or the Hindu in India, they saw a return. People started coming back because they knew that here was a source that we can trust. If this newspaper says, you know, guess what, forget inhalations, then they don't have to do it. Or if this newspaper said that this many people have died of COVID, you could believe it. You could know that there was some sort of fact-checking going on over here. So there will therefore be we are going to see a circle where we come back to legacy media in a big way, to mainstream media in a big way. The economic aspects of it will play out in the long term. Right now, digital is not really seeing too much of money, right? But it's also not very it's not very expensive. It's not very resource intensive. Anybody today can be one of your classmates who picked me up from the airport. I don't know if he's here today. He's got his own YouTube channel, he says. He's a second-year student, I think. He's got his own YouTube channel. So anybody can set up a YouTube channel. It doesn't really take much, but there's not money in it just yet. But equally, legacy media is losing out. There's no money in advertising. There's also the problem of not getting advertising because you are not supporting a particular political party, so your advertising is sort of strangled. Lots of problems. I think there will be a market shakeout in the long term, and we will see how it plays out.
I think, ma'am, one last question, and then we can conclude. I believe this is something which I personally want to know, and also my friends want to know. As we all know, attention is something which is the key to, you know, doing anything, especially for the mass audience. And from what we have realized, 90% of us, let's talk about my age group specifically, we'll rather follow what an influencer is telling us rather than actual media firm outlets or news firm outlets. And by the way, the trend has been shifting, especially after the digital revolution. Do you think there will ever be a collaboration of news outlet firms and actual influencers so that even the mass audience is being educated but with factual and right information?
Excellent question, and I think in many ways we are probably heading in that direction, probably. I'm not sure of it, but probably. you know, we mentioned this again in our previous session, there's a lot of influencers, important influencers like Dhruv Rathi and so on. They go back and get their fact checking, right, from newspapers like the Hindu, like Frontline, like they have something they've read on the Wire, for instance. Okay, they're going back into these kinds of news outlets to get their facts, to get their news. Then they are adding their own research to it. Then they're adding their own number crunching to it, and then they're presenting it to this audience in a format that is palatable to this audience, in a format that this audience understands, right? This audience is right now, I think the digital age is not sitting down with a magazine and saying, I'll read the story, the 5 pages that the story has, which could be ranged from anything from, I'm not going to read a 2,000 word story, because the ways in which my brain is hardwired has changed. Right? The ways in which the human brain is evolving in the digital age has changed. A, of course, it's not able to focus for too long, so it can't read long form. B, it is not able to engage with any one thing for too long. C, it's no longer reading, but visual, what I can see and what I can hear. So the ways in which, so if, and we have actually been very happy to have some of our stories being referred to by someone like Dhruv Rathi or other influencers, because we believe that then the people who are interested in following up on an aspect that Dhruv Rathi talks about might actually come back therefore and read the story, or at any rate download it onto their devices and then read it later on, in order to keep it as a source of reference for themselves. So I think going forward it is going to have to be a happy marriage of these two kinds of news dissemination in order to reach this kind of an audience, right? You know, there is a whole cottage industry of people, right? If you belong to, say, an English language itself, remember, it's an elitist medium. I am communicating with you in an elitist medium. And therefore, a whole bunch of people, there is a cottage industry of people who take respected English language publications and they translate it into Hindi or Gujarati or Tamil or whatever, you know, Marathi, and they have little YouTube channels where they're reading out the news in the native language. They're reading out the news from mainstream English language newspapers, magazine, but they're reading out in their own format. Then they're taking, say, a complex article. So obviously, Frontline has a certain intellectual depth, it has a certain intellectual vigor. Now, that need not necessarily be in simple language. So I believe that there's a whole, I have only seen a couple of these videos, but there is this whole bunch of people who take a complex idea from a magazine like this, who break it down into its simple parts and then present it as a video or as a Insta reel, right? So in that way it becomes consumed. And I'm quite happy. I'm happy for it to reach. I'm happy for it to reach readers. Officially we do have a policy that if somebody translates a piece from our newspaper, they're supposed to pay us some token sum of money as a fee. But very often the people who write to me saying that, can I translate this excellent article in Frontline in Marathi or in Telugu, they come from very, very ordinary backgrounds, or they come from a university which doesn't have too much money, and they want to disseminate it among their students. And I don't charge a fee, because I believe that sometimes it's more important for this, for an article to reach a wider audience, if possible, and if somebody from that audience is going to break it up into bite-sized pieces for everybody to understand, you know, feel free. Go ahead. I think it's great collaboration.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. It was very generous of you to share your knowledge. I believe it was an opulent experience for all of us, but a few key takeaways that I found out was your diction, your body language, and the way you make sure people understand it in a very simpler way is something that we all got to learn, especially me. I really thank you for that, and it was a wonderful session. Thank you. I would request the hospitality team to please guide ma'am. Guys, just please fill up the QR code, and then you can have your break till 2 o'clock. You can return back.